they had seen it too often. A few people come to the villages, enjoy the jungle, go home and never come back. We found ourselves standing in a room of a house that we would actually end up purchasing with Roque, Pancho, and Lucho, the three most predominant leaders of the Shawi at that time in 1998. And as we stood in this circle holding hands, we were understanding each other in our own language, Shawi, Spanish, English. And I remember as I said to them, we will come back. We will allow God to use us to build His church here in the jungle. After that meeting, I knew this was our mission. We were going to come back. We had to come back.
I remember when he first started talking about missions, a pastor from Africa had invited him to come, and he assembled the team from Grace of all of these people who thought this was a super exciting opportunity to go share God's word, and of course it would be. He named it GATE, the Gospel Ambassador International Team, if I remember right, is what it stood for. And they began planning this trip. And I don't remember exactly what happened that stopped the trip, but I do remember a feeling of unease, like I really see the purpose, I'm behind the mission. I obviously believe Africa needs God's word as any other country, but I just had an unease with it. Something happened and they weren't able to go, and a short time later, Rick met with another pastor who had raised his family. He grew up in a missionary home in a tribe in the jungle and raised his kids there as well, and that's Paul Johnson. He invited us to go to Peru.
Well, Jim came home from a church meeting one day and he said, "Babe, we have a new ministry that we're going to be doing." And I said, "Oh, how exciting." And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to Peru." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, me and Rick and Dan are going to Peru. And we are just so excited to start a ministry down there." And I said, "Well, what, are we gone a week or two?" He said, "No, we're going to be gone for a month." And I said, a month?" He said, "Yeah," but he said it'll be fine. And then I found out he couldn't call me, or, I really couldn't communicate with him. And so I just prayed continually for the whole month of January.
So Rick and Jim and Dan went off on their first adventure to Peru. And I do remember feeling it's still far away. I still have 2 tiny kids. It's still, he'll be out of contact. I will admit the fear of the unknown is always worse than what you do know. You assume things are bigger, scarier, more dangerous. And if you listen to Rick talk, they are bigger, scarier, more dangerous. So watching all Natural Geographic and the plants that eat people, the bugs that eat people, the things that get you in the night, I was worrisome. So I think to put myself at ease, the kids and I would go to the library and check out everything we could possibly find on Peru and that part of the country. And we'd show pictures, and then we had made a kind of an agreement before Rick left that every night at a certain time we were both going to look up and see wherever we could find the stars at night. And that gave the kids peace going outside, knowing that their dad could also see the stars. And we read the books, we learned about Peru. It was really, really exciting. And a funny thing, Rick came home and we knew more about all of the things that were there than he did, because he didn't see a lot of those things where he was at. But it was stressful, but it was also a time of God proving to me that he's in control, even in situations that I think are outside of my comfort zone. God can take care of it all. And he did. He came home well and healthy and supercharged and excited about a brand new group of people and friends for us to love on.
When Jim got home, we had hours of conversation, and it was so excited. I had not seen him for years be so excited about something. And they were really dedicated. That 1 month, they were able to meet so many people and talk with the Shawi people and make friends. And then that's when they decided that we were going to pray about it, and we were going to continue to get this ministry to grow.
If I could make it mandatory for every Christian to go on a mission trip somewhere out of the country, preferably third world, I would. Because 99% of the time, when I take people to the Amazon, every single one comes back and says, that was the greatest experience of my life.
I think the pictures, seeing from my dad's trips before, looking at pictures and whatnot, it just didn't do it justice. You'd see the pictures of the anacondas, the wildlife, the people, but when that plane lands in the middle of the jungle, it's just it's a whole nother world. And when you watch that plane take off and you know that you're there to stay, that reality is far more than I ever expected it to be.
I really didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I had talked with my brother, and so I knew conditions in the jungle were obviously not what they are here. But I didn't really have any expectations. I was just excited to go and be able to serve and really just be part of a team.
I really had no idea what the ministry was like there. I had visions of it. I worked with Pastor Rick while he was writing his book, where he talked about the trip that he took with his boys from Faith, and I was actually afraid to go. I was afraid of the unknown, mostly. I'm not afraid of bugs and those kinds of things, a little afraid of illness, but I just was the uncertainty of being so far away from my family and really not knowing what was going on there. And I never really had a passion to go there, and I never thought I would go there.
I remember when I was a kid and my dad, he went to the Amazon a ton, and so he would always buy these Amazon books for us to read, and we would look through and look at the Amazon River and all the wildlife there. And you always learn about the crazy things, the anaconda and the jaguar, and I would just get so excited to hear when my dad got home, like, what did you see? What did you eat? And I do have a crazy dad. So usually I did hear something crazy when he got home, and it was so fun. And then just thinking about, I can't wait for when I can get there one day.
I committed to the trip, and you're in the process of trying to raise money and figure out how the financial piece is going to fit together, and things had just been crazy with work, and really I was just looking for any excuse to get out of my commitment. And so I woke up one morning and I was literally reaching for my phone about to text Pastor Rick, and I get a text message that comes in from him, and it's, "Hey brother, so excited that you're still gonna be coming to Peru with me. Several people have backed out. We're gonna need you now more than ever." And so at that point I was like, well, okay God, you're clearly have me in your plans for this trip, and so we of course made it work.
So after the very first time that the guys went and they finally came home, they went on trips just about yearly for a little bit. And then about, I think it was close to 5 years later is when Jim got thyroid cancer. So he didn't go on trips for 2 or 3 years. And then it came with needing some building projects, and him being a custom home builder, he was very excited about it. So then he continued to go maybe every year, every 2 years. And every time he would go, he would always ask me if I wanted to go. And I said, "Are you out of your mind? There's bugs down there." And so we would joke and laugh about it, and I would just do a lot of prayer. So it was 2018, we found out that Jim's cancer had gone metastatic. And he, thank the Lord, he had all those years where he had cancer and it never really affected his life. Once it went metastatic, then he started to have different types of trials that he did, things that he did. Well, in 2019, he said, "Sweetheart, I haven't been able to go for about 3 or 4 years." And he said, "I really, really want to go." So he said, "What are you going to do while I'm gone?" I said, "Oh, I'm going with you." So he got this big smile on his face and he was really excited. He said, "Well, why are you doing that?" I said, "Honey, you just got off a trial. I need to be there to help you." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'll cook." So I filled my suitcase full of all kinds of stuff I wanted to cook for them that I thought they would like. I think I had more food than I had clothes.
So Yurimaguas is this kind of hustle and bustle slice of Peruvian South Americana. It's unbelievable. And it sits in a location just on the other side of the jungle foothills in such a central location because the only way in and out of the Amazon River at that point in Peru is right there. All export and import happens, which means with the 68,000 people that now live there and the vast improvements that have been made in 22 years, it is the best place for us to set up home base for the Shawi. When we started working there in 1998, they were sadly being mistreated by many of the mestizos, the half Peruvian, half indigenous people that live in Yurimaguas. And I don't want to say terrible things about them because that was just a few and they were ruining it for everyone. Today, the Shawi can walk down the streets of Yurimaguas and feel accepted and feel welcome and feel loved. And now we own a house since 1999 that has about 3 to 5 acres, a nice property. Thanks to Rick and Susie Glandon, it's in extraordinary shape. And now with Doug and Blanca officing out of the house and utilizing it, it is the place where we have the opportunity to establish a teaching center, a hostel of our own, and really not only provide all the Christian education we can for the Shawi as they travel downriver, but a place to house people from Grace when they go to do work. We've done multiple projects there. That house represents the very catalyst, at least as far as a property is concerned, for all the work that goes on in the 3 central locations of the Shawi, up in what we call the Loreto jungle. And they have the Pananapora and the Maranon River that they are able to travel, which comes down right in front of our house. Literally, you can throw a rock into the river. So God provided the perfect place for us to establish home base. So I've been a firm believer that the best way to care for children living below the poverty line around the world who don't have health care, who do not have clean water, and most of them don't have a family unit other than maybe one parent, and they're living in poverty, I've found the best way to do that is partnering with Compassion International. And we had prayed and hoped for decades that Compassion would go into the jungle so that we could sponsor children from the jungle. But then we found out that after all these years of praying, they were moving into Yirmaguas, and that they were going to have 400 children that needed sponsored. A sponsorship with Compassion International is as simple as a full sponsorship, about $45 a month, and you can literally care for the needs of a child spiritually, emotionally, and physically. I love Compassion because they take the gospel. We had been told that Compassion was going to provide a little meeting that we could go to and hear about Compassion's partnership. We got to that church and it was like they'd established a party, a celebration.
The trip to Compassion International in that church was heart-gripping, wrenching, joyful, all of those emotions. Their welcome party was just very humbling that they would seek to have us there and welcome us like that with their little resources they shared with us. And then to see these children and their families so excited.
They had basically prepared a big party for us. I mean, as soon as we got there, I believe they just gave us a standing ovation as if, just to thank us, which, it's obviously very humbling, but it was just joy. Just a lot of joy is what I remember from that.
Like when I close my eyes and don't even care if anyone sees me dancing. Like I can fly and I don't even think of touching the ground. Like a heartbeat skip, like an open page, like a one-way trip on an aeroplane. It's the way that I feel when I'm with you. Brand new.
All of those children that were there, plus 300 more, would become available for sponsorship through Compassion. And so we started that. I challenged the church to sponsor all 400 children. We sponsored almost every single one of those 400 children. And then this year when we went back, I remember us going to the church and seeing, probably 50 or more of our children there. And we got to meet them and play with them and listen to them and encourage them and love them.
This last summer, we weren't able to go on the trip this year, but Pastor Jim and Pastor Judy took a gift from our family down to our Compassion girl, Jennifer, and I was able to call and FaceTime with her and meet her and her mom, and I was just so moved to see how much she appreciated what we did, which seems so little compared to what we have here.
It was just so exciting for Leanne to be able to see her child's face in person over the phone. We really had an absolutely amazing time, and it made me know the importance of having my own Compassion child. My Compassion child is not in Yirmaguas, but is close. So I hope one of these days if I get to go again, maybe I'll get to see her.
Just to get to meet them in person after writing letters back and forth was the most incredible thing. It was so heartwarming to see the smiles on their faces, to meet their families who, you realize that you're not only sponsoring them, you're sponsoring their entire family. And I make sure that I never forget to write those kids letters now, knowing that they are real human beings with real life problems, and the little that I can do month to month makes their life makes a huge difference in their lives. And so it's incredible.
Like when I close my eyes and don't even care if anyone sees me dancing. Like I can fly and I don't even think of touching the ground. Yeah. Like a heartbeat skip, like an open page, like a one-way trip on an aeroplane. It's the way that I feel when I'm with you. Brand new.
Those children were giving us gifts. They were loving us, and we felt privileged to love them. So this partnership with Compassion is a gift, and You know, I will constantly say, if you've never sponsored a child with Compassion International, do it. And if you're a part of Grace, get a child from Iramaguas. It is an amazing, tangible transformation that takes place in their life. The very first time I flew over the jungle in a Cessna with Craig, who has literally been our pilot and friend for 22 years, it was just so nice to get on a plane. You're a little bit nervous. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've flown all over in commercial planes and a little bit smaller commuter planes, but I'd never flown in a Cessna.
So we work with SAM Air, which is the aviation branch of South American Mission. Our headquarters are in the Charlotte area, and we've been in Peru for over, I think it's been 75 plus years in Peru. The aviation program has been about 55 years serving in the jungles of Peru, and our purpose and our vision for being there is to facilitate transportation into tribal areas, into remote areas of Peru, so that missionaries can get into some of these remote areas. Travel is really difficult by surface. By surface, I mean by boat mainly, because there aren't any roads in the jungle. And the airplane really gives access to some really remote areas.
And you just look down and you see this carpet of trees, looks like broccoli, with a chocolate river running through it because the muddy Amazon. And every now and then you see a little fire burning, a couple huts, and then you go a little further and there's a village.
Oh, the Cessna was awesome. I hate flying, but I don't like to travel or fly at all. But the Cessna, for whatever reason, it's one of the coolest things that you can ever do. You know, you're flying not too high, not too fast, but you're above the tree line and you're able to just see. You're just able to see the whole country. I loved it. It was absolutely incredible.
Oh my goodness. I am an outdoors lover. I am fascinated by nature and beauty, and I can't take enough pictures. I'll take pictures of the same tree several days in a row just because it's so breathtaking. When I saw the Amazon, I was amazed again at God's creativity and just the beauty, the vast, overwhelming beauty. It looks different than my world here, but just so colorful, so incredible.
And I remember going there in love with the jungle and leaving there in love with the people. I'd always wanted to be in the Amazon, but all that takes a huge backseat to the Shawi people and our partners, our friends, who have no doubt taught us far more than we have ever taught them. The moment you land in the plane, it's 100 and whatever degrees and 100% humidity. Before you can even get to the back of the plane or the well of the plane, they're carrying your bags. They're taking you to your spot. This year they built us a hut to put our tents in. And little did we know we were going to be in an 8.3 earthquake, and that hut actually gave us some stability. That's the kind of generosity of the Shawi people.
It's far different from our way of life, so it's hard to understand how are these people like me that they can live there and actually exist and thrive, because later I learned they were thriving. First I thought this is sad that they live this way, but when I met them, I couldn't have been more wrong. They love that life. They enjoy their village. It's what they know. They love their family. They take care of their children. They have their marriages. Different? Yes, very different. But I think that first lesson I learned is they're so much like me. They're God's creation. They have minds and thoughts and feelings and ambitions and goals just the same way we do. And God's love, their eagerness to see God and His Word and understand His love was the thing that stood out to me the most.
You have the language barrier. You have the cultural barrier. We didn't know if we'd ever really make the deep connections. Oh man, I mean, you don't even have to know the language. Your hearts just connect. And if you're just honest and real, and if you listen and watch and observe, they will be a life-changing people group.
So in 2001, my dad was coaching the varsity basketball team at Faith Christian. I was going into my freshman year of high school, and he told me that him and the coaches had decided that they were going to take the team to the Amazon to build a church.
We went into the village of Soledad. This was back when, I mean, the moment the plane dropped you off, you were completely removed from civilization. The church building they had was thatch roof, tin walls, and it was falling apart.
You know, people that know me know that I don't have I'm not a handyman, so to speak. So this was kind of my first experience of building anything to this magnitude. And in the middle of the jungle, when you don't have the resources that we have here, it was difficult.
These guys worked so hard. I was a lot younger back then, and so I worked extremely hard. We laid 2,800 square feet of concrete. Pillars had been poured by a team before with Veet Steiger and some other guys. We built the walls. We put the trusses up. We had to carry the wood, big mahogany 35-foot planks from the jungle, 30 minutes.
We had a bunch of big basketball juniors, seniors in high school. We thought we were all tough, and you have these small Indian people, and what takes us 3 people to carry out of the jungle. I remember looking behind me, there's 3 of us carrying this big, I don't know, 30-foot truss of wood, and it takes 3 of us, and I look behind and there's 2 small Indians carrying the same size piece of wood, and we were struggling with 3 of us, and they made it look like nothing.
And it was so cool getting to experience this with my son. He was the first one of my family to travel to the jungle with me. And there are so many memories I couldn't even begin to share them. I have a book called Only Imagine that actually tells this story. But I watched Jordan bond with these guys. I watched each of these young men grow up. I remember a young man by the name of John Sanders was going to have his 18th birthday on August 12th, which happened to be the day we finished and dedicated the building, and we would have church the day after. And I just remember John being so excited that we finished the project on his birthday. Everybody was thrilled. Fast forward 8 years later, the next time I took all of my family to the Amazon, and my son Jordan and I, in a very kind of sketchy situation, had to walk a team out of the jungle from one village, San Antonio, to Soledad, about a 5.5 hour walk, cross the river 4 or 5 times, walk through the jungle. And we got to Soledad, and I said, son, you haven't seen the church? I haven't seen the church in Soledad since '01, because I've been going to Maranatha and San Antonio and Palmiche and all these other villages. I go, let's go get a picture. So we went and we stood in front of the church building, and we took a picture, and it's still a very precious memory for me, because that was the building I built when my son was 14 years old, and I was standing there with him, you know, at 22, 23 years of age, and that building was being used every day for the gospel.
it's amazing what it's become and the uses that they have gotten out of it, and just the sense of community that just that one simple structure that as a high school kid I couldn't see the value of fully. Now looking back, it's really amazing what that's brought to them.
What does it mean for a community in the jungle, a community of now 1,400 people, to have a church? Everything. It becomes a central location. And even those who are not believers know where the church is at. Even those who don't know Jesus as their Savior know where they can go. That building is Nueva Vida. It's new life for them. And that church, it is another building that serves as a catalyst for transformation. In 1996, the end of 96, when I met Paul Johnson, he mentioned the importance of one church basically adopting one people group and really focusing our attention on what we ended up calling our mission approach, church-to-church missions. We said, what if we sent missionaries who were full-time staff members and they didn't have to spend any of their time raising funds? The average missionary spends a minimum of 50% of their time on the mission field raising money. That's a waste of a great missionary. So we took the approach, we're going to put all of our effort into that. We started having this conversation with two extraordinary people here at Grace, Rick and Susie Glandon, who were getting married. They were about to get married. And they said, we're passionate about going to the Amazon.
I have always had a desire to do cross-cultural missions. Even as a little girl, that has always been a desire for me. And after I became saved, it was even a stronger desire. I really understood why the importance of going into the mission field and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ.
First of all, God had already been laying on my heart about missions. And it was interesting because it was always in jungle. And growing up, the jungle was always something that I wanted to see. And so 5 years before I met Susie, I had been praying, God, if you want me to be married, you'll have to bring her to me because I don't make good choices. But if you want me to be single and serve you, I'm here, and it's all for you. So 5 years later, in a small group, she had come to talk about partnering with pastors in Peru. And so she was explaining the program, but the DVD player wouldn't work, so she had to talk about it herself.
I went on my trip in January, which he graciously paid for, which was awesome. And I was just kind of like, wow, who's this guy that is willing to do that when he doesn't even know me really, you know? And then in April, he proposed to me. He used the words in Shawi. He looked it up for man and woman and put that on the card when he proposed, so that was awesome. And then we were married in August, and in January, Rick went down. The elders wanted him to check out whether it was a calling from him. I knew I really wanted to go. I was so in love with Peru.
They had me go on the very next trip to go down, and it was in Palmichi. And while we were in Palmichi and I was teaching down there, afterwards there was a young Shawi man that was down there, and he wanted to speak to me. So afterwards, through translation, we started talking. He says, I understand God's discipline, he says. So we had a really good conversation. And then he asked me about my hand, you know, what had happened to my hand. And then he got the whole group around to be able to hear the story. So I knew that God was calling me to speak to the Shawi and love on them.
We packed up everything, and by August we were in Peru.
You know, I've always had a heart for missions, but I had a timeshare in Mexico that I bought many years ago, and would go to Mexico pretty regularly every year. Not every year, but almost every year. And during that time, as time went on, the Lord seemed to impress on me that I needed to learn Spanish. In 2014, I had an opportunity to go to Spain with a friend of mine who was interested in starting a coffee shop ministry. And it was while I was in that trip with him that the Lord really impressed on me that I needed to start actively learning Spanish with eventually the purpose of being involved in some sort of a ministry in a Spanish-speaking country. So we were Skyping with Pastor Rick and Pastor Jim one Sunday morning, and then I shared with them what I felt God was calling me to do, eventually go to a Spanish-speaking country as a missionary. And as I shared that, I could see Rick and Jim beginning to talk to each other, kind of whisper toward each other. And I finished sharing, and then Rick said, "You know, Doug, we have a ministry in Peru, and they speak Spanish there." And he said, "We'd like for you to pray about going to the conference in January this coming year." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd be open to that." And long story short, the Lord provided the funds for me to be able to do that, and it was just a real blessing to be able to meet Rick and Susie and to go with Ron Dalton and Chris Cavari and our team that went in that particular year to San Antonio. And it was during that time, over the next year after that conference, that the Lord really impressed on me that, that's where He wanted me to be, in Peru. And so the following year, in 2016, in June, it sold my barber shop, sold my business property, and rented my house, and packed up and headed for Peru. During the time I was there, I got involved with a local church there, and I met a young lady there named Blanca. And it was during the time that I was studying in Arequipa that we met, and we went out for coffee, and that one coffee date led to another and another, and when it was time for me to leave, we had decided that we would like to continue our relationship. So I went to Yurimaguas, and we continued to talk on the phone, and she came and visited in March, and it was that time that we were engaged, and the following November we were married.
I never in my life think that I will be a missionary or live in the jungle. I never be in the jungle before in my life too, so for me it's a blessing and also amazing that how the things happened in my life, because everything, bad or good thing, are a blessing for me, because I learn about these situations, bad or good, and I could understand, and I am understanding how God works in your life. And it is a blessing, it is amazing blessing, because you can realize that God loves you and He always makes the best for you.
You know, one of the greatest strengths that we have on our team is that there are 6 indigenous Shawi missionaries who travel the rivers, and they take our resources. Many times they take my sermons, sermon outlines that have been translated. They take them to these pastors in very remote places and the pastors in other areas, and they encourage them. They pray with them. They give them resources to support their work. I mean, that just doesn't happen. When it's just a Western couple or a European couple going, they really are on their own, and it takes a much longer process for them to develop that kind of implementation and assimilation. So we've seen this, and our 6 missionaries, Gregorio, Romulo, Darwin, Edison, Hiro, and Jose Yuma are they're just a gift to this ministry.
It's just been an honor to be able to be involved with working with them, learning from them, and being able to share God's Word with them so that they can take the main themes of the Bible and share that with their own people, and it's been a blessing.
The work that has been possible through these 6 missionaries and the love they've received from our Western missionaries is immeasurable. It's immeasurable. There is no possible way to put even a number on the impact they've had in the 52,000 Shawi. If this was me or you or somebody else from the West, it'd take us 10 years to get used to the bacteria, to be able to travel the rivers, to know the language, to understand the culture, and we'd still just be getting started. These guys are doing it every day as their people allow them to care for them spiritually because they are Shawi. And Doug continues to expand the horizons and the borders, if you will, of our outreach program in Peru.
Mi nombre es Gregorio, yo soy, anteriormente estaba trabajando como líder de la iglesia, apoyando en las iglesias en mi pueblo, Nueva Vida, pero gracias a Dios hace 4 años que estoy trabajando como misionero de Iglesia de Gracias. Mi función es salir a las comunidades y llevar el mensaje de la salvación, la palabra de Dios y también al mismo tiempo las enseñanzas que nos brinda la Iglesia de Gracias acerca de la salvación eterna. El impacto que me trae a mi vida es desde que comencé a trabajar con la Iglesia de Gracia, veo bastante cambio en las iglesias entre los Shawi. Porque ellos conocen ahora, entienden ahora por medio de cómo nosotros salvamos. Quizás anteriormente los hermanos estaban un poco confundidos, pero ahora ellos ya ven o ya entienden cómo es la salvación. Por medio de cómo, por medio de quién somos salvos.
No, estaba muy lejos de Dios y no conocía, crecí en una familia incrédula. Y entonces nadie no me enseñaba acerca de la palabra de Dios y me gustaba. Yo pensaba más que todo no existía Dios. Pero gracias a Dios que hubo un tiempo en que Dios me llamó, me tocó en mi corazón, ¿no? Yo para poder aceptar a Jesucristo como mi Salvador. Pero aún todavía yo recibía a Cristo en mi vida, ¿no? Pero aún así, pero yo tenía esa duda acerca de la salvación, porque yo no era perfecto después de bautizar o después de aceptar a Cristo, porque no era perfecto, siempre me gustaba hablar mal y también me iba hacía cosas malas otra vez, a pesar de que soy creyente, ¿no? Pero entonces, poco a poco ya vienen cambiando, como dice la enseñanza, ¿no? Tiene un proceso para poder.
Sí, yo sí, de verdad, antes en mi vida perdidas, pero en mi juventud no estoy conforme, pero cuando edad de 22 años me ha cambiado mi vida, me sintió la verdad en mi corazón, me ha utilizado la verdad nuestro Señor Jesucristo. Hasta hoy también estoy apoyando a los hermanos, con mucho animado también, otro en iglesia también. Nuestro Señor Jesucristo ha mandado un único hijo, unigénito, ha mandado para salvarnos nosotros. Gracias por él estamos salvos, ahora somos hijos de Dios.
Muchas gracias y primeramente agradecer a Dios que Dios ha dado esa visión de Iglesia de Gracias para trabajar con ese tipo de grupos, así como nosotros que somos Shawi. Y también agradezco mucho a ellos por sus enseñanzas que nos brinda o que nos enseña a través de tu persona para que nosotros así entender las enseñanzas de la palabra de Dios y compartir a otros. Entonces para mí es que Dios le bendiga a estos hermanos misioneros o ancianos de la Iglesia de Gracias, líderes de Iglesia de Gracias, que Dios les bendiga confiando en el Señor porque somos uno solo delante de los ojos de Dios.
They have been through so much and made so many sacrifices that I don't think many of us could even begin to think we could withstand. You know, I know when I go there and I walk through the jungle, or I get on a boat ride like we did the last time we were there, again, you're kind of like in the Pirates of the Caribbean. You're sort of seeing all this amazing stuff, but you know you're going back. And God willing, you know you're flying home. And you know you can do this without air conditioning or the food that you like or the modern conveniences for a short time. They get sick. They're in danger. I mean, we have had them, some of those missionaries over the years, be bitten by the most deadly spider in the jungle, the banana spider, and be sick. We had one guy that got bit by a venomous snake and he almost died. He literally had to go through the torment of a vicious, venomous snake bite for 3 nights alone in the jungle. The sacrifice of being away from their families for sometimes upwards of a month at a time. That's a long time to be without your family. To go village to village, and because the Shawi are kind and hospitable, most of the time it's no problem, they'll be fed, but you don't know where your next meal is coming from. And yet these 6 Shawi missionaries make this sacrifice with joy. Man, they're just so joyful, and they're so positive, and they're such great communicators. That's the joy of the Lord. That's their strength. They understand that every time they board that boat or they walk on foot, they might not see their family again. They might not ever get back home. They might get sick. They might be in danger. There's no, flight for life or call an ambulance. I mean, they truly live by faith, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
I sense overall in the Shawi tribe in the past 20, well, really 30 years that I've been there, see a real growth. And something that we've talked about recently is really seeing them come alive and understand grace and understand that what it means to be accountable to each other, what it means to share the love of Christ with others, and that their doing church is not just about do's and don'ts and having a song and pass the offering plate and a sermon. It's really loving each other, and it's about community. And we see that when we have these annual conferences, the way they interact with one another, the way they interact with the missionaries that come. And one thing that really struck me just this year, when I got there, one of the pastors came up to me. I hadn't even gotten out of the airplane yet, and he looked through the door at me and said, he had a little notepad in his hand, and he says, "What are your prayer requests for the missionaries? We want to pray for the missionaries. What are the prayer requests?" And I was like, wow, this is amazing, And I have seen a huge change in the Shawi tribe, and it's because that there's been so much effort put in there as far as the gospel goes, as far as training, discipling, and then actually equipping the national pastors and equipping national missionaries from that tribe. It's amazing to see.
It used to be when we started going to the Amazon in the late 90s to this part of Peru, it was very common to see 25, 26-year-old men married to 13 and 14-year-old women, girls. That is improving. It has been improving. They're not marrying as early. The women aren't having babies as a whole at 15, 14, which was the average age. However, there's still a lot that goes on in the village that shouldn't. There's still spousal abuse. The women are neglected. As Wes Porter, who's been on 2 trips in the last 14 months, would say, you don't see a lot of hand-holding in the jungle. Now, what we have seen with our pastors and our missionaries is that they have become attentive to their wives, attentive to their children. They've become loving, and they're showing their affection more externally, which is incredible.
I shared with them my struggle as a woman and a mom going through empty nest syndrome. You spend your whole life watching your little tiny children and holding them and caring for them and making sure nothing ever happens to them. And then you look down one day and your hands are empty because they've flown off and you did your job. but now you've got to figure out what to do with those empty hands. Those ladies teared up and felt even more so disregarded and left behind and trying to find purpose. And it was amazing for them to share that emotional moment and say, God cares for me right where I'm at. He knows where my heart hurts. And His Word tells me I'm valuable, I have purpose, and I can be a powerhouse in my village to share Christ with the younger mothers now and share my experiences. And that was a powerful time. They taught me in that moment.
It was a reminder to me that I had to completely just relinquish the control of being able to handle everything. And I had to trust God for everything. I had to trust God for that every time I washed my hands, I wasn't going to get some sickness. And I lived in fear of, oh, God, please don't let me get what Pastor Rick's talked about in some of his stories. And I spent way more time in prayer than I have in a long time, just asking God to give me peace, to help me trust Him in a way I never have before, because you are at a place where there's nothing you can do. There's nothing there that we are used to having here. Learning to lean in and trusting God was really good for me. God definitely grew my faith there. And I prayed a lot to be safe and to stay healthy, and God honored that, and I'm so grateful for that.
You know, this trip, just the opportunity to see and be with other believers and see just how earnestly and how far other people will travel just to worship and hear God's word. You know, this was a conference, obviously, so a lot of the people who had attended were walking from other villages. And, you know, there wasn't any one aha moment where a light bulb went on, but I just had this feeling of peace the entire trip where I just felt like I was just home. I wanted to publicly dedicate myself to Christ. And to do that down there, I thought it was just a way that I could do it in such that it was fitting, because to go so far from home and have that opportunity to do it with other believers in that setting, I thought was special because God has brought me and kept calling me from a distance for so long. Of course, there's a lot of the other kids and women that were being baptized down there, and the whole village came out, and it was just a cool time, and we're singing really just praise to our God. And I believe it was Pastor Rick and Doug Usher, and they just baptized me right there in the water. I'll always remember that. That was awesome.
It's amazing how, even with the language barrier, how the love is there. They can see why we're there. And right before we left, all of the pastors came together and they prayed over Jim, and it was the most powerful prayer I'd ever heard in my life. And it just was, I can't say enough of how I'm so thankful the Lord moved me to go, because it was one of our last big trips. But just seeing how He was loved, I was sorry I hadn't gone before because I missed so much.
Yeah, this last trip, I had the privilege to lead the youth conference, and we had teens from all over come into this one village, and it was so cool to see how many teenagers came out. But something I noticed is the last few trips I'd gone, the teenagers are pretty to themselves. They don't talk a lot. They kind of sit over by themselves, whereas you'll see the little kids, they're all playing together and having fun and giggling, and the parents really give the little kids a lot of attention. But it kind of feels like once they become a teenager, they're made to, it's time to grow up, it's time to be an adult, And so I think that the teenagers, similar to here, they feel a little lost. They don't really know their place in life. They don't know, what is my purpose? I'm supposed to be an adult, but I'm still a kid. And it was so cool this last youth conference to just see them come out of their shells. We played games with them and they were laughing the whole time and smiling, and you could just tell they felt so special. Like, we have this for us. It was made for us, and we're learning what to do with God. We had so many kids come to know Christ during that youth conference, and just the grateful attitudes that they have. I think that it's easy here in America to feel like we're entitled to something, that we deserve something that we don't really. And I believe that the people down there, they're just super grateful for every single thing that they have. It doesn't matter if it's a t-shirt that they wear every single day of that week, they are grateful for it. And it's so cool, you see the older kids share with their younger siblings. So if we hand out gifts or we give them something, you don't see the teens run in and grab it for themselves. You see them run in, grab it, and then go give it to their younger sibling. And the first time I ever saw that, it really made me step back and go, do I do that in my own life? Am I that grateful with everything that I have? Because I deserve none of it. God has blessed us with this, and that's something I learned from them. They understand that already, and that'll always be a lasting impact on my life.
I don't know that it's necessarily a sense of pride, more as a sense of gratitude just to be a part of something like that. I have buddies that were on that trip that we still communicate on a weekly basis, daily basis, and at times we'll kind of reminisce just how grateful we were to be a part of these people's lives. And we got to do something that not a whole lot of people get to do. And so I think that when we look back at it, it's more of a sense of thankfulness to the church, to the people of this congregation that helped pave the way and make it possible for us to be able to do that. So I would say that's really the main thought that crosses my mind when I think about it.
I can promise no one has been more impacted by the love of the Shawi people more than I have. Every single time we see each other, we have that connection. It's like, man, we sweat together, we bled together, we took a giant step of faith together. So my life has been completely transformed. It changed my preaching. It helped me measure every word as opposed to every concept. It changed the way I viewed my wife and my kids. I love them more intensely and more passionately. My life has never been the same, and it will never be the same. And that's what really I value above everything else, is the relationships, the lessons, and the life change that God has brought into my heart and my family and my life in this church because of the Shawi. The Amazon is our mission, not going to change. We must go back. We have to go back, and we will.
feels like we're in the dead of winter, waiting on something better. But am I really gonna hide forever? Over and over again, I hear your voice in my head. Let your light shine, let your light shine.